Guess what, golfers? Vegas isn't just casinos and pool parties. In fact, there are 50 golf courses within a 15-mile radius of the Strip, all boasting beautiful desert oasis landscapes. So, if you're looking for a break from the action, consider hitting the links. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Donnie, the season is 6 months. 5 if you check out in September. You're gonna have a bad month. The Yankees had a horrible month, that is true. But beyond that, their regular season looks okay. They're gonna win their 90 games or maybe a little bit more and get to the postseason. What is everybody freaking out about?
Everybody freaks out. It's a Yankee tax and a Yankee fan tax as well, where every single season you enter into the equation going like, it's championship or bust.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember these names. A.Z. Fudd, Olivia Miles, Lauren Betts. Depending on who wins that lottery, that's going to depend on who goes what. If Washington wins, it's Fudd. She's from the area. If Dallas wins, they're going to bring Fudd to play with, obviously, Paige. If Minnesota wins, I think they go Miles with the point. If Seattle wins, they go with Miles, and the same thing with Chicago.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I don't like it. Does he think he's playing on the opening kickoff? Does he want to get a handoff at that point?
I mean, he's involved in the program. Here's the problem with James Franklin.
Why do coaches even run out with the football team? Like, Andy Reid doesn't run out with the Chiefs.
Yeah, but it's the NFL. This is college kids.
What about college basketball? Do those
they're
guys
like a
run out
father figure. Well, they used to be like a father figuring. Now the kids are making more than the coach.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Welcome to the NewsWire here on SportsGrid. It's a football Friday, our first NFL football Friday of the 2025 season. Thanks for jumping aboard. We'll recap the game last night between the Cowboys and Philadelphia Eagles, and of course preview yet another game tonight. It will be the Chiefs and Chargers exclusively on YouTube. We'll get a preview of that a little bit later in the show. Also, Bill Bender, our college football analyst and expert, joins us here on the show to talk about the latest, what he has going on at Sporting News, some predictions as well. Also, Simon Applebaum from the podcast tomorrow will be televised, breaks down everything happening in sports media. Dan Fates from ABC in Buffalo with a preview of Sunday night's matchup with the Ravens and Bills, and Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report with the latest in sports betting. Last night, the NFL made its debut. A lot of drama at the beginning of the game. A player thrown out for spitting on another player early on as Jalen Carter of the Eagles got the season started in the wrong way. And the game ended with a little bit of a thud. The first half of the game, incredible between the Cowboys and Eagles. In fact, there was 41 first half points. But then a rain delay happened and a lightning delay happened. And then not much more happened in that game. 24-20, the final. So the Cowboys cover the 8.5. The total goes under. Imagine betting the over on that one and getting all those points in the first half and then getting virtually nothing in the second half. Nice game for Jalen Hurts as well, who scored a couple of touchdowns. On the Dallas side, Javonte Williams scored a couple touchdowns for them. Really good scene on opening night. But Nick Sirianni basically said it felt like two games were being played. One offensive game in the first half and one defensive game in the second.
Man, I mean, the first half, right? I think what you saw, first half, we 3 possessions, 3 touchdowns. So obviously a really good start. Can't start much better than that. I thought he called it really well. Again, the communication. Kevin and I have been together long enough. And through all these things where the communication was great, we did what I wanted us to do in certain situations, you know, in game management situations as far as run, pass, or set up or whatever that is. You know, Kevin's calling it, but obviously we talked through a lot of those things and we were on the same page there, and I thought he did a good job. You know, I think both offenses struggled a little bit coming off the long break, and the defenses kind of stepped up, and on both sides of the football, there wasn't any scoring after I think it was 4:44 left on the clock when the clock stopped. So, you know, we'll go back and look at that, but, you know, I think Kevin did a really nice job of, you know, calling the game the way the game needed to be called today. But again, you have to go back and look at the tape and reevaluate everything. But I got a lot of confidence in Kevin and the job that he does.
There was a long lightning delay, approximately an hour, because of the weather in Philadelphia. May have also changed the fortunes of the Dallas Cowboys, who got off to such a good start, but head coach Brian Schottenheimer said that was all for naught in the second half.
Yeah, it was really, Calvin, a tale of two halves. I talked to the guys about that in the locker room. We came out on fire on offense in the first half, and defensively we struggled a little bit. And then I thought we made some great defensive adjustments in the second half, and we flipped it. We gave ourselves a chance to win, and offensively, we didn't, really do enough. We put ourselves in more third down and longs, and just weren't able to capitalize. But that's how a division game should feel, man. We had good moments. They had good moments. They do what they do. They bleed the clock on you and they limit your opportunities. I think they had the ball for almost 35 minutes, and we got to make plays when they're there. We got to get guys on the ground and things like that. Throw and catch a little bit better, and we had our chances. Don't worry about CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee's going to be fine. What a great player. Again, this was a team defeat, and we own that. We understand where we can go as a football team. We understand. I love the competition. I thought guys competed their butts off. I thought that was great. But we're all about winning, and we didn't win tonight, and so therefore it's not good enough.
And Lamb, as he referred to, dropped a couple of passes at the end of the game, could have potentially led to a win. Tonight, a game in Brazil in the NFL, exclusive to YouTube. If you have YouTube, which you should, it's completely free. The Chiefs are 3-point favorites against the Chargers. The total is 46.5 in this game. They kick off this evening, 8 o'clock Eastern. In Brazil, there have been some field issues, by the way, on this stadium in the past. Not sure if that's going to be the case tonight. Weather's supposed to be good, but naturally Andy Reid was asked about the conditions and whether or not they will be completely playable going into the game.
Yeah, no, I know the league has spent time on the field, so field conditions was a question. I know that the league has spent time working on that. They were aware of it last year, and so I think it'll be ripping and ready to go. But you know what? Whatever it is, both teams are playing on it, and we roll.
Like I said, to be in this game, this second game of the NFL season, Friday night game, big stage. There's an honor there to be selected to play in this game, and that really overshoots any. The home game aspect of it, but at its core, this is a big game to us. This is huge. You want to start off your season on the the right foot, and that's what we prepared ourselves. We've been working very, very hard for this game, and we're ready to have that pay off with a great performance on Friday night.
Jim Harbaugh's former team that he coached, the San Francisco 49ers, will open up against the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday. Will they have Christian McCaffrey? We'll probably find that out later today. McCaffrey was held out of practice yesterday with a calf issue. No word on what or exactly what this is, but of course Kyle Shanahan will have to talk about this later today. Micah Parsons, ramping up, says it's basically the Packers' call as to whether or not he plays Sunday against the Lions. And a bit of a surprise in the NFL yesterday. Amari Cooper, who signed less than a month ago with the Las Vegas Raiders, has decided to retire. Apparently either doesn't feel good or doesn't like what he's seeing. Amari Cooper, 10,000 receiving yards over the course of his career and 64 touchdowns. Meanwhile, in college football, more changes coming to the transfer portal in college football after the NCAA FBS Oversight Committee voted on Thursday to move the January transfer window and eliminate the spring window. So this is a shorter period of time that players can actually transfer, which is what colleges want. They want to know if kids are going to stay or go, and they'll vote on this sometime before October 1st to shorten the transfer portal. Meanwhile, there are reports in North Carolina that Bill Belichick, the head coach of the Tar Heels, is not willing to allow his former team, the New England Patriots, to scout their players going into the NFL draft. Kind of wild. North Carolina has declined comment, but it does seem like that's the only team, his former team, that he won't allow. Bills quarterback Josh Allen has his college jersey retired at Wyoming, and there are college games tonight, including Eastern Washington at Boise State, Northern Illinois at Maryland, and James Madison, Louisville. Yes, the schedule's not fantastic. It's much better tomorrow. As far as the Major League Baseball slate last night was concerned, the big hitter for the New York Yankees this season that's come as a surprise to most has to be Trent Grisham. He hit his 30th home run last night, and the Yankees beat the Astros by a final of 8-4. The Rays take care of the Guardians 4-2. They've now won 7 games in a row, and all of a sudden, the Rays are back in the playoff mix. Royals hit 4 home runs. Bobby Witt hit a home run in the 8th inning, and they swept the Angels 4-3. The Pirates have their biggest series win of the season the last few days. They swept the Dodgers. Paul Skeens, 6 innings pitched, no earned runs. His ERA is down to 1.98. Ranger Suarez, 6 shutout innings. The Phillies beat the Brewers 2-0. Freddie Peralta also pitched very well. And the White offense have come alive since the All-Star break. They scored 11 more runs yesterday, and they swept the Twins. So the White Sox, not the worst team in all of baseball this season. That's an accomplishment in its own. Bill Bender joins us next to talk college football.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
Donnie, the season is 6 months, 5 if you check out in September. You're going to have a bad month. The Yankees had a horrible month. That is true. But beyond that, their regular season looks okay. They're going to win their 90 games or maybe a little bit more and get to the postseason. What is everybody freaking out about?
Everybody freaks out. The Yankee tax and the Yankee fan tax as well, where every single season you enter into the equation going like, it's championship or bust.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember these names: AZ Fudd, Olivia Miles, Lauren Betts. Depending on who wins that lottery, that's going to depend on who goes one. If Washington wins, it's Fudd. She's from the area. If Dallas wins, they're going to bring Fudd to play with, obviously, Paige. If Minnesota wins, I think they go Miles with the point. If Seattle wins, they go with Miles, and the same thing with Chicago.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I was looking at through my phone at first. I'm like, why is there such a delay? And why are we getting pitch hitters right away? Oh, the pitcher got thrown out for some reason. Maybe he hurt himself. But no, turning out and seeing a brawl was absolutely hilarious to let that one play out. Just the way it is sometimes in baseball. We don't get a lot of good fights and a lot of good brawls and anger, specifically from two teams that aren't going to the playoffs. So good on them for showing that moxie last time. But it's good to see a little bit of a brawl and a little bit of that passion here.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Did you know sportsbooks tend to draw up tighter bet lines for events that get even more bettors, like championship games or major matchups? My tip? Try betting on less popular sports. You might have a better shot at beating those odds. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Let's bring in Bill Bender from Sporting News as we review the college football slate this week. And certainly doesn't have quite the spark that last week did, but I'm sure that by the end of the weekend, there'll be some exciting games, Bill. Great to have you back here on NewsWire. So let's start off with the marquee game, then we'll go to the rivalry game. We'll start off with Michigan against Oklahoma. Rare matchup you don't see very often, and really good job, I think, by college football in general for saving something for us for Saturday night in week 2. Sooners 5.5-point favorites, total 45.5. Michigan generally pretty good as an underdog in this spot. Oklahoma could take a major step forward in their chase for the playoff if they can win this game. And conversely, Bill, if they lose, they're only going to have to look at themselves. They put them at home on a Saturday night in Norman. They're supposed to win this one.
Yeah, Michigan's never been to an SEC school on the road, which is a wild stat in itself. And if you look, these two teams, the last time they played in the 1976 Orange Bowl, they combined to complete 5 passes. I think John Mateer and Bryce Underwood might clear that on the first drive. Opportunity for in-game betting here because I want to see how Oklahoma's offensive line holds up against a Michigan defense that will be without Jayshon Barham for a half. And then on the other side, I want to see how Bryce Underwood, 5-star freshman, had a fantastic debut, reacts to playing in his first road start. At first glance, I'm going to take Michigan to cover. I think Oklahoma wins straight up. This could be one of those 28-24 type games. A little bit different than last week. There'll be a little more offense here with the QBs.
Yeah, I think so. Now, offense is not on deck, I don't think, for this Iowa State game. And there's an issue with a running back in this game, too, in terms of injury, which may even slow the game down more. Bill, toward the end of the year, Iowa's totals in the games they were playing was in the mid-30s. So maybe we're getting a little bonus here at 41.5 because the Cyclones, I guess, they're 3.5-point favorites at home as they open up at 12 o'clock Eastern. Iowa, generally speaking, has dominated the series. But the Cyclones are favored in this one. You have an opinion?
They're favored despite losing the last 6 home games against Iowa. You know, there's that big brother, little brother feel here in this game. Mark Gronowski's going to have to get it going in the air a little bit for Iowa. Not 44 yards in his debut. Granted, you know, that was a blowout and he didn't play the whole game. But they're going to have to make some plays in the air. I kind of, in a series where they've had so many close games, you got to take the underdog here. And I'm going to take Iowa and the points. I think it's going to be a 3-point game either way. You know, that's history suggests maybe 1 or 2 plays in the fourth quarter make the difference. But I like Iowa. I think it'd be close. I actually like the Hawkeyes to win outright in an upset.
Illinois takes on Duke. Maybe this will be one of the more underrated games of the weekend. They play at 12 o'clock Eastern. The Illini 3.5-point favorites at Duke. Total of 49.5, Bill. Now, naturally, I look at this and say to myself, man, is Duke just not good this year? How in the world are they getting points against Illinois as they take them on with a total of 49.5? What gives here?
Well, Illinois could be on upset alert here. Duke, 2-1 straight up as an underdog last year under Manny Diaz, covered each one of those games. Darian Mensah, the Tulane transfer, had 389 passing yards last week. So they're going to throw it around a little bit. And I think for Illinois, they've got to get pressure on them. Gabe Jacas had 2 sacks last week. Luke Altmaier, experienced quarterback. I did pick Illinois to win the game, but it's going to be touchy. I think this is a really underrated Duke football team. We spent all week talking about Bill Belichick. This is the best football team in the triangle.
UCLA takes on UNLV. I think both teams a little desperate here to look better than they did in week 1. UNLV, to me, is a little bit of a surprise that they're getting 2.5 points in Vegas at home. The total is 55.5. I guess the problem is that I really just don't trust either team. The game is Saturday night, 8 o'clock Eastern. The defenses have not been on display in the early part of the season with both of these squads. Who gets the win in this one?
Well, we'll see how Nico Iamaleava bounces back here. You know, rough debut against Utah. Couldn't get anything going offensively. You know, on the other side, UNLV, group of 5 hopeful, Mountain West Conference hopeful. A little bit of light on Dan Mullen here. I think UCLA makes a couple more plays in this game, but it is a dangerous spot on the road. It's almost a stay away game for me. If I was betting, I'd take UCLA with the leap of faith that Nico shows some improvement from week 1 to week 2 and they make enough plays. But, man, they're going to have to stop the run. They couldn't do that last week against Utah, and they had a lot of problems in pass protection. If UNLV wins here, maybe an opportunity to take them now to get into the college football playoff for futures bets.
Yeah, definitely so. I didn't think they looked all that great either in week 1, but then came back as the game went on. So the way that the college football schedule is set up, Bill, and I guess I'll pose it to you like this, is it gives teams that lost in week 1 the opportunity to come back and feel really good about themselves. And I think what I'm referring to, of course, is Texas for one, Clemson would be another one, Alabama is a third team. Which of those 3 that I just mentioned to you do you think, I'm not going to ask you who's going to cover a 30-point spread, but who do you think comes out looking like they really have something to prove after that first week?
Texas. I think Arch Manning will play better. I think they'll score a bunch of points. And I came away from that Ohio State game thinking they do have an elite defense. They only give up 14 points and a little over 200 yards to the Buckeyes. So I think if I was taking one of those three, and by the way, in Sporting News Picks, I have all three of these teams covering. I think it's for different reasons. Texas, Arch Manning looks good. Clemson, angry at home against Troy, and Cade Klubnik cleans it up. And finally, the one that I'm least confident in, Alabama could go either way. We've spent all week ripping on the Crimson Tide about how they looked last week. We'll see how they do. But so many giant spreads out there this week. I think these are three teams that'll be angry for different reasons.
Yeah, I think so, Bill, without a doubt. All right, so we'll catch up with you next week here on the show, Bill. Enjoy the college football weekend. I'm not saying that you get a break from college football this week, but it certainly feels like the NFL is taking center stage until next week when I'm seeing a ton of good college football games Thursday, Friday, and Saturday next week as well. All right, Bill, enjoy it. We'll see how things go this week, and we'll catch up with you next week here on NewsWire. Thanks again.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks, Craig.
All right, Bill Bender, check him out online at sportingnews.com. We got to take a quick time out here on the show. We come back next. We get a preview of the Las Vegas Raiders and New England Patriots. Pete Carroll facing his former team. You can probably say that about a lot of teams. Carroll's been around the NFL for a while. Also, Matthew Stafford ahead of his game against the Houston Texans. Looks like he will start for the Rams. You're watching NewsWire on SportsGrid. We'll take a quick time out and be right back with the SportsGrid Sound Off next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Matthew Golden, one of my favorite prospects coming out of Texas. He had an incredible game against Arizona last year in the college football playoffs. Just, big touchdown after big touchdown, big moment after big moment. I loved him all year. And I was a little, skeptical at first, like, okay, well, it's kind of a crowded wide receiver room. And guess what? It's getting less crowded because everybody's hurt in Green Bay. Matthew Golden is the truth. He's the only guy healthy enough to play.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Donnie, the season is 6 months, 5 if you check out in September. You're going to have a bad month. The Yankees had a horrible month. That is true. But beyond that, their regular season looks okay. They're going to win their 90 games or maybe a little bit more and get to the postseason. What is everybody freaking out about?
Everybody freaks out. It's the Yankee tax and the Yankee fan tax as well, where every single season you enter into the equation going like, it's championship or bust.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember these names: AZ Fudd, Olivia Miles, Lauren Betts. Depending on who wins that lottery, that's going to depend on who goes what. If Washington wins, it's Fudd. She's from the area. If Dallas wins, they're going to bring Fudd to play with, obviously, Paige. If Minnesota wins, I think they go Miles with the point. If Seattle wins, they go with Miles, and the same thing with Chicago.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on this Friday, getting practice reports of different players who are in and out. Looks like Giants wide receiver, according to ESPN, Malik Neighbor is expected to play this weekend, but he's been suffering from a bad back for weeks here in the preseason. And head coach Brian Daboll says he'll be all right, but he will not practice today. So got to keep an eye on that going into the weekend. All right, now let's get a preview of a few games in the NFL. We'll talk a little Raiders football, some Rams, and of course the Denver Broncos have high expectations as well. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. All right, well, Pete Carroll is back and head coach in the NFL. Once upon a time, coached the Jets, coached the Patriots, coached the Seahawks. Now he is the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. So, of course, he's heading back to coach in a place where he used to coach again with New England. And certainly expectations are high for the Raiders to do better, at least, than they did a year ago. Here's Pete Carroll on the preview of his Week 1 matchup against New England.
We'll see how we did it as coaches. We'll see how we do as players. And when we get to performance time, always in games, it's about making the right adjustments and staying ahead of it if you can, and hitting things off before they happen, and then also responding to the bad stuff that happens. So that's crucial.
What jumps out when looking at the tape?
They're physical, like you would think. Josh has run the ball a lot in his history, and Mike Vrabel wants to run the football too. They're very physical about it. The running backs run really hard, and they have, like Josh has, traditionally had a really downhill attack, and it's pretty classic, and it's really good.
About that rushing attack, how much do you have to prepare for also Drake May, who also is a dual threat quarterback himself?
It's absolutely on in the middle of the preparation, because he is so apt. He ran for almost 500 yards last year. And I think our numbers were like he's the second most scrambling guy last year. We know that he can take off and run, and he can make things happen, and he did it in preseason. It made it look easy. So that's a big factor in their favor as a running team as well. It's even more important.
Patriots 2.5-point favorites against the Raiders. Meanwhile, the Rams got good news this week. Matthew Stafford will start in the season opener as they take on the Houston Texans. It's only a matter of time before quarterback Matthew Stafford gets acclimated with some of his wide receivers, but of course not playing in training camp in the preseason hasn't given him that opportunity. They acquired Devontae Adams in the offseason, and Stafford talked about how things are slowly coming in sync now that he's back on the field with his number 1 or number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, every time we're stepping out on the grass together, we're getting better. I'm learning him, he's learning me. We're talking about what we want to do on certain plays. And, so all the time that we've had, on the grass and frankly off the grass has been valuable time. He's a smart guy. He's been around for a long time. He's played the game at a high level for a long time. So the conversations that we have are smart. They're on the point, and we're moving on. And it's been great to work with him so far. I've had a blast and can't wait to get out there and play on Sunday.
What's the hardest aspect of that, of building chemistry with a new player that you need actual reps on the field to do?
I don't know that there is like a hardest aspect of it. I think the more time, the more dialogue, the more reps that you get, the better it gets. And obviously the only thing that we're up against, like every team is up against, is just the amount of reps that you get, especially this time of year. It's super dialed in game plan wise. And so, every time you get out there on the grass, you got to make those reps count.
And finally, one of the biggest spreads of the weekend, Denver Broncos open up at home, where they've had a lot of success at Mile High in the first couple of weeks of the season, with other teams just sort of getting acclimated to that high altitude. Well, the Titans have their work cut out for them, and the Denver Broncos, of course, are going to throw Bo Nix at them, who had such a good second half of the season. Nix, going into year 2, says he's getting ready for whatever comes his way.
Well, I feel much better. Just a year makes a lot of a difference. So I feel like I'm much more comfortable and in a better spot.
Bo, being named a captain, is that one of those things that no matter how many times it happens, kind of never gets old for you?
Yeah, it's an honor, and it's something that I'll never take for granted. I think what makes it more special is you're voted by your peers, you're voted by your teammates, and it just means a lot that teammates respect me and to put me in that position. And so I want to be as good as I can be in that spot and make it worth the pick.
Well, last year you started the year on the road. This year you're starting at home. How much will the home field advantage help playing in front of these fans?
Well, I hope it'll help a lot. I hope it's a really good home field advantage. I hope the crowd's in it the whole game, and no matter what situation it is, I hope they're standing, going crazy, and making it a great home environment like Mile High can be.
We'll take a quick time out here on NewsWire, but when we return, it's time to dive into the latest in sports betting news. We bring in Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report when we return next on NewsWire.
The sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Matthew Golden, one of my favorite prospects coming out of Texas. He had an incredible game against Arizona last year in the college football playoffs. Just, big touchdown after big touchdown, big moment after big moment. I loved him all year. And I was a little, skeptical at first, like, okay, well, it's kind of a crowded wide receiver room. And guess what? It's getting less crowded because everybody's hurt in Green Bay. Matthew Golden is the truth. He's the only guy healthy enough to play.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Donnie, the season is 6 months, 5 if you check out in September. You're going to have a bad month. The Yankees had a horrible month. That is true. But beyond that, their regular season looks okay. They're going to win their 90 games or maybe a little bit more and get to the postseason. What is everybody freaking out about?
Everybody freaks out. It's a Yankee tax and a Yankee fan tax as well, where every single season you enter into the equation going like, it's championship or bust.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember these names: AZ Fudd, Olivia Miles, Lauren Betts. Depending on who wins that lottery, that's going to depend on who goes one. If Washington wins, it's Fudd. She's from the area. If Dallas wins, they're going to bring Fudd to play with, obviously, Paige. If Minnesota wins, I think they go Miles with the point. If Seattle wins, they go with Miles, and the same thing with Chicago.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
All right, Sam McQuillan's ready for a big weekend of college and pro football. Before we get to that, let's get back to the latest in sports wagering and some news as well. By the way, you can read about all of the stories that we discuss over at LegalSportsReport.com. Great to have you back here, Sam, on the show here on this Friday as we close out the week. Let's get started and talk about the CFTC ruling that Polymarket is now back in the United States. I know that's not going to be ready for the weekend, and also probably a quick synopsis as to what Polymarket is would, I'm sure, help our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, of course. Polymarket is the latest prediction market that's going to launch a sports platform just in time for NFL season. They got a letter from the CFTC this week that cleared them to launch. They actually have been a company that's been around, the globe internationally, taking sports prediction wagers. This is, of course, the mechanism that looks a lot like gambling, but these companies are calling it a prediction market service and say it's, commodities trading and contracts trading. So it falls under federal oversight instead of state laws. So it's allowed these companies to, have these, now NFL spreads in all 50 states. And there's a big fight going on with that. But Polymarket has kind of been in the background while this is going in the U.S. They've been out of the U.S. since 2022. They got kicked out for taking unregistered contracts on the election at the time. This was before a court ruling that said that, no, that's actually okay. So they had to pay a fine and stay out of the U.S. But now they have acquired a Florida-based exchange called QXC. So after acquiring that exchange and after getting this green light from the CFTC, they can now, essentially take NFL spreads, NFL bets, maybe even player props, and other sports bets in the United States and all 50 states for the foreseeable future. So we're going to have our ear to the ground to see when they actually do end up launching. They can launch as soon as today. They might not get ahead for the weekend, though. I'm not sure how quickly they'll be able to get everything up and running, but they're a big rival of Kalshi. They just got valued at $1 billion a couple of months ago. So that was kind of the breadcrumbs that, maybe they're going to enter the U.S. market again if they're getting valued so high. Kalshi's valued at $2 billion. And the sides are very much kind of rivals with each other, and they've been rivals overseas. But now that they're in the U.S. doing sports, it's going to kind of turn up the heat a little bit more on, how they can outcompete each other. So really interesting to see what Polymarket does, what the product actually ultimately looks like. And then, of course, what states and courts ultimately decide or say on the matter will be something that we'll have to decide or see about on a later date. But it certainly is quite a messy space right now.
Yeah, no, it's this prediction market stuff is kind of crazy to see now, just point spreads being up on some of these sites, as you pointed out on social media earlier today. All right, so maybe the prediction markets jumping in the back door will open up to somebody else competing in the future against DraftKings and FanDuel. But Sam, it just appears as though for now there's really not much to talk about. These two companies are dominating the space and dominating stocks, and for whatever ESPN Bet is trying to be, or some of these other companies, they're going to have to fight their way over FanDuel and DraftKings.
Yeah, DraftKings and FanDuel have combined now for 70% of the market for a long time, and that number keeps going up every football season. This football season, investors are calling especially critical, not just for those two companies, but to your point, Craig, if anybody else is able to make a dent, it'll have to happen now. ESPN has had about 3% market share. Their goal is to get to 10% by next year. So if they can't make a big push this year and really see a lot of the new features that they put on their apps, a lot of the integrations with ESPN fantasy products, with ESPN, flagship products across the board. If those don't pay off soon this football season, it might be curtains for them. They do have an opt-out clause, so that would only leave the space, more dominated by FanDuel and DraftKings. BetMGM is, of course, also in the race, but they've been more focused on iGaming lately and have kind of ceded some ground to FanDuel and DraftKings. But the big question here this football season, just for the industry overall, is going to be looking at handle growth. There's about $13 billion that is expected to be bet on the NFL this season, but it's obviously more than last year. You have another state turning on as well, but the rate at which handle is growing has definitely slowed down over the past couple of years. It was about 15% to 30% growth every year, and this year so far it's about 8 to 9% growth. So I think investors are going to be really keen to see if these sports books are able to take more money. Now, again, that's not exactly how you measure how well they do. They also have margins, they have hold rates, they have the revenue that they make is much more important. But if people are betting less or not betting as much at an increased rate, that definitely is a concern of Wall Street. So they want to see if, shoving parlays down everyone's throat, whether that's actually making people bet less money, like betting $5 as opposed to, a bigger bet you would put on a spread or something like that. So that's going to be a very, important thing for investors to watch this NFL season, how much they can actually keep growing the handle and ultimately how well the books do, because as we know very well, they got absolutely hammered last football season when I think there was about 10 weeks where 75% of the favorites won, and the public loves to back favorites. So we'll see if the pendulum swings this season, if the public gets hammered. That's kind of how the law of averages usually work. But again, this is a very explosive business and risk-averse business. So investors are going to be keen to see week to week how the results are doing. And if it doesn't get off to a good start, you could see some heat from Wall Street and the stock prices.
That would be fascinating to see if that was the case. All right, so unlike last season, the sports books, Sam, no doubt get off to a good start last night. Okay, like if that's the play, what we saw last night, dog and under covering, this is going to be the opposite of what we saw a year ago. Last year, Sam, was such an anomaly for the sports books with them losing consistently on all these overs and favorites winning, even in college football. I have a feeling we're headed back to where we used to be.
Yeah, it really was. And it was such an anomaly because it's never even happened in the past 80 years. It wasn't just, one weird season. It was like the weirdest season ever. And it came at a time too when, more people had access to sports betting than ever. So part of me thinks is, the way people are betting, is that changing things? Is the information that's being put out there, the way we consume sports betting is at an all-time high. So you have to wonder if that had an impact. But to your point, Greg, I would be shocked if it didn't swing back the other way this season. Not just because kind of that's what the law of averages tells us, but also the sports books themselves do not want to be put in that position where they expose themselves to a lot of risk. So it'll be really interesting to see how they maybe adapt and try to push or market different kinds of bets and how they react. But definitely got off to a good start last night with a game going under. With a big spread being covered by the underdog. So I'd expect more in week one. I'd expect sportsbooks to be rooting for that. So far, most of the money tonight is on the Chiefs. Most of the money is on the over. So not surprising there. We'll see if the books can go 2-0, and we'll see how they do on player props and parlays and all the other fun things that the public has really loved to bet even more than spreads and totals and money lines at this point in the game.
Yeah, and having a really good week one in college. I mean, Sam, the two most public teams in college football, Alabama loses outright. Notre Dame is the favorite, loses too. Are there any other teams, by the way, or any priorities for the books that they have to be careful of? I mean, I know they got to be careful of Alabama, Notre Dame, the Dallas Cowboys, well aware of those teams.
Yeah, a lot of money on Texas right now. Obviously, they didn't have the best start. A lot of money coming in on Ohio State as well. I think with the expanded college football playoff, it's going to be even more interesting to see where they shift their priorities and where the season-long betting kind of changes throughout the year, especially with more games. I know Arch Manning was like, he had more money than anybody else to win the Heisman before the game. That's obviously shifted a lot. A lot of money coming on the Alabama receiver. But, they lost. They start off 0-1. But, now that you have more games and more of a chance to make the playoff, I think it leaves a lot more exposure if teams lose early on. It's going to impact these kind of season-long betting markets a lot less. On the NFL side, you have most of the money on the Bills, the Chiefs, the Eagles, kind of the usual suspects there. It'll be interesting to see if any of that shifts after week one. But, again, you have 17 games now in a regular season in the NFL. So I think week one kind of means less and less to bettors in the betting public. I mean, last year you had the Saints score over 40 points in back-to-back weeks to start the season. They're now projected to have the least amount of wins in the NFL. So you never know what can change throughout the long season. But I'd imagine the Bills, the Chiefs, Eagles, Ravens will all be right up there throughout the season, unless something crazy happens like an injury or a suspension or something like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Sam, because I've done a week of shows where everyone comes on here and just says this team's going to stink, take the favorite. Do they not remember last season with the Saints being amazing in the first couple of weeks? I think Dallas just scratched the surface. My guess is the majority of teams in the NFL this weekend not just cover, but maybe even win outright. That's the way that the NFL usually is. Sam, great stuff as always. Enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll catch up with you again next week.
You too. Thanks, Craig.
Our host of Pro Football Today, Mike Blewett, is up next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Matthew Golden, one of my favorite prospects coming out of Texas. He had an incredible game against Arizona last year in the college football playoffs. Just, big touchdown after big touchdown, big moment after big moment. I loved him all year. And I was a little, skeptical at first, like, okay, well, it's kind of a crowded wide receiver room. And guess what? It's getting less crowded because everybody's hurt in Green Bay. Matthew Golden is the truth. He's the only guy healthy enough to play.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Donnie, the season is 6 months, 5 if you check out in September. You're going to have a bad month. The Yankees had a horrible month. That is true. But beyond that, their regular season looks okay. They're going to win their 90 games or maybe a little bit more and get to the postseason. What is everybody freaking out about?
Everybody freaks out. It's a Yankee tax and a Yankee fan tax as well, where every single season you enter into the equation going like, it's championship or bust.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember these names: AZ Fudd, Olivia Miles, Lauren Betts. Depending on who wins that lottery, that's going to depend on who goes one. If Washington wins, it's Fudd. She's from the area. If Dallas wins, they're going to bring Fudd to play with, obviously, Paige. If Minnesota wins, I think they go Miles with the point. If Seattle wins, they go with Miles, and the same thing with Chicago.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
It's game time for Mike Blewett and our friends with the Pro Football Today show, getting ready to kick off this weekend on Sunday. And it's great to have Mike back in the house as he's getting all fired up and ready to go. Mike, great to have you back here on NewsWire for another season of the National Football League. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, excited to be here. Obviously kicking off In-Game Live this Sunday with Scott Wetzel. It's going to be a great show. We're kicking off with 8 games in that early window, and excited to keep it rolling. I thought we had a very entertaining game last night. I thought the rain delay threw a little in our nice our parade, our celebration, but I still thought it was a overall pretty well played game. Both quarterbacks look good, and I think it's a good way to start the season. I think we'll get another good one tonight as well.
Yeah, 24-20, as Mike mentioned, the final there. The Eagles defeat the Dallas Cowboys. That was the final. But, I mean, the game itself, you missed the game within the game if you were not watching. I know Mike was, I know I was, I know everybody else was, when it was just strange to see Jalen Carter exiting the field. We really didn't know why for the first few minutes of the game, and then we found out through video that Carter, their great defensive lineman, ended up spitting on Dak Prescott, the quarterback of the Cowboys, and he was thrown out of the game and did not play before the game even started. What a way to kick off the season. Carter was available post-game and did speak about the spitting incident.
You know, it was a mistake that happened on my side, and it just won't happen again. So I feel bad for just my teammates and the fans out there. You know, I'm doing it for them. You know, I'm doing it for my family also. But the fans, you know, they show the most love. You heard them out there today. You know, just not being able to start the game, even finish the game is just me up. But we're gonna get it better. It won't happen again. I can make that promise.
I think that he learned his lesson, Mike, but the question that everybody is asking this morning, and I'll ask you the same thing, do you think Carter is going to get or deserves to get a suspension beyond what happened last night?
I think both. Definitely deserves it. I think he'll get a game. Nothing really surprises me when it comes to the suspensions with the NFL in either direction. Could be harsher. They could say he's already suffered the 1-game penalty. But I think you have to send a message like this. It was very specifically emphasized throughout the offseason and last night beyond the spitting incident that sportsmanship is something that the NFL is taking a hard look at. I think personally, I'll be annoyed by some of those taunting flags that we saw thrown last night that I thought weren't all that egregious. So to spit on the quarterback basically before the game's even started, right in front of the referee, I think it's fair to send a message to Jalen Carter. And while I appreciate the fact that he did acknowledge and apologize, doing it with your smile on your face leaves me a little nonplussed about how sincere it is. I got to be honest. So we'll see how it goes for them moving forward. The team's obviously really good, but they need Carter in order to be a Super Bowl champ.
Yeah, we'll see if the NFL decides to do anything, and probably a decision will come at some point this weekend. All right, Jalen Hurts had a really good game, reality and fantasy. 62 rushing yards, I think, was surprising, Mike, for a lot of people. They've always been careful with Jalen Hurts to give him that many rushing yards, and it also led to a couple of touchdowns, 152 passing yards as well. A lot of questions were thrown the Eagles' way after the game. Hey, what's going on here? Is Hurts just going to run a lot more and maybe even more than Barkley this season? I don't think that was the case. It just kind of felt like that was the game plan for this one going in.
Very efficient throwing the ball. They took away the wide receivers. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith combined were a non-factor in the game. You barely saw anything out of Goddard. It was really Saquon who was mostly bottled up and Jalen Hurts. But this is the poison pill with the Eagles. You drop back into zone to make him uncomfortable throwing the ball over the middle, which he isn't already, and take away the outside. He'll kill you with the runs. He was many times, and even my son commented, he said, why is he jogging down the field? Shouldn't he be running? I said, well, they're giving him all this space. He's going to take a nice, easy jog, slide for a first down, and move on to the next series. So I think it's more indicative of that the Eagles bring a lot to the table offensively, and they can hurt you different ways. I would not expect that many rushes on a game-to-game basis.
Yeah, and I can relate here. My son playing fantasy football for the first time at 13 years old, watching the game, saying, I should have taken Hurts, I should have taken Javonte. I'm like, this is not that we're not going to do this. This is not this is not how fantasy works. Players are going to score. You can't look back. You can only look forward. Let's look forward to tonight.
We had a very similar experience last night with 12 and 13-year-old boys playing fantasy football.
I should have done this. I should have done that. I'm like, buddy, I've been doing this for 40 years. Like, just chill.
First game.
Okay. Yeah, it is. Yeah. All right. Chiefs and Chargers tonight exclusively on YouTube. It should be a really good scene in Brazil. The Chiefs are 3-point favorites. The total is 46.5. At least from what everyone is saying, the field conditions are not going to be a thing. And I think that the total also tells you that that's the case too. They were not going to set this thing at 46.5 if they have concerns, because by the way, both teams were not fantastic, Mike, last season on offense. What do you make of tonight's game?
right.
Any position that you're going to take on this one?
Yeah, I think the lines are set right where they need to be. They make a lot of sense. I'm leaning towards the Chiefs and an under. So favorite with the under tonight. I think teams will be running the ball quite a bit. The Chargers, that's what they like to do. And I do think that Isaiah Pacheco with 11.5 carries being the total that's set, I don't think you'll get it that low for the rest of the year. I like his rushing attempts over 11.5. There's some juice on it already. So I would jump on it now before it pushes up to 12. I think he'll be a heavy dose of the offense, as Mahomes obviously will always be comfortable. We'll see if this offensive line, which has 2 new full-time starters, allows him to be as comfortable as he wants to be.
2 teams you watch very closely throughout the season, Bengals and Browns in the North. Bengals 5.5-point favorites on the road. Browns are notorious for having bad seasons, but pulling off crazy upsets like twice a year. Is it right out of the box? Did they do it in week 1, Mike?
Well, based on recent history, it's probably stupid to bet on the Bengals early in the season as they drop a lot of games that they shouldn't. Where I'm really going to focus, though, are Bengals point totals early in the season. I do think Burrow is going to throw a ton. I think this offense is going to put up a lot of points. I think they will need to in order to try to make the playoffs. So I'm going to go with overs in the passing game and the Bengals point total over 26.5 right now.
All right, Mike, enjoy In-Game Live this weekend. We'll catch the coverage exclusively here on SportsGrid. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, buddy.
We'll hit on the Los Angeles Clippers controversy with Kawhi Leonard and their owner next.
I was looking at through my phone at first. I'm like, why is there such a delay? And why are we getting pitch hitters right away? Oh, the pitcher got thrown out for some reason. Maybe he hurt himself. But no, turning out and seeing a brawl was absolutely hilarious to let that one play out. Just the way it is sometimes in baseball. We don't get a lot of good fights and a lot of good brawls and anger, specifically from 2 teams that aren't going to the playoffs. So good on them for showing that moxie last time. But it's good to see a little bit of a brawl and a little bit of that passion here.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You're looking for JJ. You and I already discussed here. Addison's gone for a couple of games here. They don't really have a number 3. Thielen, fine. You do have a nice tight end here. The running game could be solid here. Like I said, I don't think he'll have the least productive season of his career. If the question was how it should have been with the injuries, I might have said yes, because then it would be 88, 14, 107. So then I might have said yes.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
No better place to be than SportsGrid. College football today, right here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe, Lisi, Donnie, right side for the entire season, Joe, on Saturday. This is your place. This is your place to be, Joe.
I love it. I tell you. And it's flying. Show's flying. We're on an hour already. I can't wait. We're licking our chops for these Rat Pack games. And it's a great slate.
Look at you on the screen right
Look
now.
like a little rat.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
The reason why I feel like Jared Goff doesn't really enter these MVP conversations. Jared Goff last year was on the team with the best record in football, threw for 4,700 yards, 37 touchdowns, and Tom was never in the race. He was never in the race because we know he's not that guy.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Dan Fates is going to join us in just a few minutes as the Buffalo Bills get set to open up on Sunday night against the Baltimore Ravens. We'll have a preview. The big story in sports journalism this week, courtesy of Pablo Torre, who reported that Kawhi Leonard and the Los Angeles Clippers, including their owner, circumvented the salary cap by offering Kawhi Leonard a no-show job for millions of dollars to what he did not have to participate just to get paid. The Clippers have since denied wrongdoing, and Steve Ballmer, in an interview with ESPN, made it explicitly clear that he was not culpable in this situation. It was more of the company that was involved. All right, needless to say, let's get into it. And our friends at Front Office Sports have all of the investigation details.
Well, the Clippers are denying accusations by a Pablo Torre report that they circumvented, reportedly, the NBA salary cap when they allegedly paid star forward Kawhi Leonard $28 million for a no-show job. But interestingly here, Daryl, Torre is now indicating that more stories of other NBA players are on the way. So let's get to FOS reporter Colin Salau for more. So Colin, where do things stand now after the Clippers denied that story yesterday?
Yeah, the Clippers sent a longer statement that Shams Charania from ESPN published, and essentially this statement, kind of just expounded on what they had said, continuing to deny that both Steve Ballmer and the Clippers did not circumvent the salary cap. What's interesting about their statement is a couple of things that Pablo Torre actually pointed out on X or on Twitter. He said that the original statement had the line that it is provably false that they circumvented the salary cap. That is no longer part, or was not part of their longer statement that they issued yesterday. But the Clippers did say that, again, going back to the idea that Aspiration is a fraudulent company, their co-founder was pleaded guilty to a fraud of nearly $250 million. So they pointed at that as something as well that shows that they had no idea of this and that Aspiration was the one at fault here.
So how about Mark Cuban then? He's getting involved on X. He went and quote tweeted basically Pablo's thing saying like, hey, this is false. I stand with Ballmer. I'm Team Ballmer on this. Defending the Clippers. I mean, he's no longer an NBA owner. He has no skin in the game. Like, what does this kind of tell you? Why would someone like Mark Cuban come out and say like, hey, I'll come on the show. I'll defend this?
I mean, first, I think Mark Cuban, obviously his perspective is more as an owner. So he would be able to say, hey, this is what we've done. This is what I've seen. So there could be a lot of things that could be misconstrued. I think he has always been the type of person to involve himself in anything that happens to have, business and ownership means. But what's interesting is it seems like he and Pablo are talking and maybe potentially bringing him onto the show. Pablo Torre reached out to Cuban on X as well, and Cuban responded and went to their DM. So I'm curious to see if they're going to have that conversation, because if you saw previously, Pablo Torre was called out by Bill Simmons as not an actual journalist. And then a week later, Pablo Torre spoke with Bill Simmons. That, I think, is what might happen here.
It was funny because Torre had said to Cuban, I have questions for you, which makes me think, oh gosh, what did Pablo Torre find out about Mark Cuban? But the other thing I think is interesting here, Colin, is Pablo did an interview with Dan Patrick, and he sort of indicated more stories of more players are on the way, that this is not just a Clippers Kawhi Leonard situation here. I mean, is this an existential problem in the NBA that all of a sudden other players and other teams could be ensnared in this?
Yeah, well, I think obviously we can't assume, because the Clippers are not, they're innocent until proven guilty. But I think, and I mentioned this on the show yesterday, that if there's something here, this just sets precedent for other situations where this may have happened. I think Pablo, I've spoken to him in the past, he kind of looks for these like weird things that happen in sports and then like just deep dives into them. And I think it started here when someone probably tipped him to the idea of, hey, look at that thing that happened with Kawhi, that interesting little scenario. He's talked about the Jalen Brunson situation in New York. That was also interesting because Jalen Brunson got a pay cut of about $100 million. I don't think he's saying, hey, there's something nefarious that happened here, but he's definitely saying, I want to look into these things that are curious that are happening, because maybe there is something that exists. And if it happened in LA, maybe it happened in the other biggest market in the NBA.
Absolutely, and we'll see exactly how existential this is. And we should note the NBA says they are investigating the Clippers, and the Clippers saying in their statement they fully welcome that investigation.
We will check in with Front Office Sports later today on SportsGrid. We'll check in with Dan Fates from ABC in Milwaukee to ABC in Buffalo, to preview the upcoming game between the Bills and Ravens. You're watching NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Plenty more to come, so stay with us on the grid. We'll be right back.
I was looking at through my phone at first. I'm like, why is there such a delay? And why are we getting pitch hitters right away? Oh, the pitcher got thrown out for some reason. Maybe he hurt himself. But no, turning out and seeing a brawl was absolutely hilarious to let that one play out. Just the way it is sometimes in baseball. We don't get a lot of good fights and a lot of good brawls in anger, specifically from two teams that aren't going to the playoffs. So good on them for showing that moxie last time. But it's good to see a little bit of a brawl and a little bit of that passion here.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You're looking for JJ. You and I already discussed here. Addison's gone for a couple of games here. They don't really have a number 3. Thielen, fine. You do have a nice tight end here. The running game could be solid here. Like I said, I don't think he'll have the least productive season of his career. If the question was how it should have been with the injuries, I might have said yes, because then it would be 88, 1,407. So then I might have said yes.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
No better place to be than SportsGrid. College football today, right here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe, Lisi, Donnie, right side for the entire season, Joe, on Saturday. This is your place. This is your place to be, Joe.
I love it. I tell you, and it's flying. Show's flying. We're on an hour already. I can't wait. We're licking our chops for these Rat Pack games. And it's a great slate.
Look at you on the screen right now.
Look like a little rat.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
The reason why I feel like Jared Goff doesn't really enter these MVP conversations. Jared Goff last year was on the team with the best record in football, threw for 4,700 yards, 37 touchdowns, and Tom was never in the race. He was never in the race because we know he's not that guy.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Yeah, welcome back to NewsWire. Dan Fates is with us from ABC 13 in Buffalo, getting ready for the opener on Sunday. Night football should be a magical night. And by the way, I believe the final opener in the history of this stadium being played on Sunday night as well. It should be fun. Dan, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Man, this is going to be a special night as we say hello to the new NFL season and pretty soon say goodbye to old stadium in Buffalo.
Yeah, it's going to be electric. It's the final home opener at Highmark Stadium before they move across the street to the new Highmark Stadium. It's obviously a rematch of the AFC divisional playoff game between the Bills and Ravens, which was just a great game. So I'm sure I know the Ravens have used that as kind of a little bit of motivation. They've talked about this offseason, but it should be electric.
Yeah, and I would say as we take a look at the standings from last year before we go ahead to this year, the Bills certainly had a fantastic season. Nothing less than a Super Bowl, I would guess, at this point is going to be acceptable. Bills won 13, Miami 8, Jets 5, Patriots 4, and so they are the class of the division at this point. And the most valuable player in the National Football League, Dan, was Josh Allen. He threw for 3,700 yards, 41 total touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. I do want to play this quick clip from Josh Allen on the first game of the season and then get your thoughts.
Yeah, just try to get hit early on. And that used to be part of my deal. It was like, my first couple of years, I'd ask for a quarterback run early to try to get my pad set and feel like I'm back down to earth. But just trusting the game plan, trusting my feet, getting a good warm up, trying to keep the heart rate down, listening to what I listen to, and just focus on executing. No way, excuse. It has in the past. It has in the past. I don't advise it anymore, but try not to get a hit at all. That's the name of the game, but sometimes it helps.
More smiles from Josh Allen than I've ever seen going into a season. Maybe married life is treating him pretty well. Not going to be a lot of smiling on Sunday night, though. I mean, this is a tough matchup, but Allen, the odds-on favorite to come close to or win the MVP once again this season, Dan.
Yeah, and that clip was so funny just talking about the nerves, because for how good the Bills have been in their last 4 week 1 games, there's been 2 wins and 2 losses. The Bills haven't come out great right out of the gate. And even the win they had last year at Arizona, they were horrendous in the first half of that game. It took another Superman Josh Allen performance in the second half to come back and win that game. So we were kind of asking him, like, what have you found out about these last few week one games that you can kind of rely on? And he's talked about his maturity and letting the game come to him and trying not to do too much and not play hero ball, and how he used to get so jittery before games. And like you talked about, it's the final home opener at this stadium. It is Sunday Night Football. It is Lamar versus Josh Allen. And he kind of joked like, yeah, maybe I need to get hit. And he's like, just kidding. But all this goes into it. And you talk about Josh Allen being the MVP. And I think I was on this show before and we talked about it. Josh didn't win the MVP because of his stats. He won because he did more with less. And so the big question coming into this season is, did Brandon Beane and this team get better? And how can they get over that hump and get that elusive Super Bowl appearance is number one, and then win the championship is number two.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because when you look at these two teams, I made this case on the show, Dan, earlier this week, that the Ravens have provided more for Lamar Jackson than the Bills have for Josh Allen. I mean, this is factual. Look at the playmakers and the skill set around them. 4 consecutive Super Bowls. We're going to put that to bed after the season, hopefully, for the Bills. 91 and 94, of course, all of those different appearances. Sean McDermott, so tired of talking about it, basically wants to put this to an end. And look, I think the bottom line for the Bills this season, Dan, you tell me if I'm right or wrong here. I think you get to the Super Bowl, just like any championship in sports, you don't know what's going to happen. So I can't indict them if they don't win it. But anything less than getting there, Dan, I think is an unsuccessful season for the Bills.
I agree, especially because you have Josh Allen. Before it was like, oh, you have a top quarterback in the league. Well, now you have the most valuable player in the entire league. So you've gotten that. You've checked that box. And like you said, look at the all-pros. Look at the Pro Bowlers that the Ravens have. And they keep stocking talent after talent. The Bills, they're not that team right now, and that's on Brandon Beane. For as much as Sean McDermott deserves criticism for 13 seconds and the way that his defense has failed in big games, I understand all of that. But the question marks coming into this season is Josh Palmer going to be a guy that they paid a lot of money to improve this offense? Because the wide receivers weren't great last year. Josh just made it work. He's throwing to Ty Johnson. He's throwing to Mac Hollins. Will Dalton Kincaid step up? Will Keon Coleman elevate his game in his second season? Josh is so talented, but you don't want to just put training wheels on the Ferrari that you have. Like, you got to give him weapons. That's what the Ravens have done with getting Derrick Henry and all of the wide receivers that they've given him. The bigger question mark to me, Craig, is what will this defense be? Okay, last year they weren't great. They were good enough. They forced a ton of turnovers. Incredible turnover margin for the NFL. They won't be that good again. It's just not possible. The Bills turned the ball over 7 times. I would bet my mortgage that they're going to turn the ball over more than 7 times. It's just a matter of, can the defense get stops? While they were number 1 in forcing turnovers, they were last in forcing punts, and they were horrendous on third down. So they invested a lot in the defensive line in this draft. They invested in corner and Maxwell Harrison in the first round. Will those guys be better? That's the unknown. I guess you have to be cautiously optimistic as I cover this team, because I'm going, it's not the same, but you don't know what these young players are going to do. They're starting Cole Bishop at safety. He was banged up most of his first year. He was injured at training camp. We don't really know what he's going to be alongside Taylor Rapp at safety. And then you brought back Trey White, who's injured right now. We're kind of waiting to see what his status is for the game. There's a lot of question marks, especially going into your first game for a lot of these young players is Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Good luck.
Yeah, it's going to be a prime matchup on Sunday night. And you talked about the defense, and they did add players to the defense. We'll see if it is enough. Let's circle back to the schedule here. And the Bills, of course, going to play a tough one. The good news is after this game, of course, against the Baltimore Ravens, they do have their tougher games at home. So that's good at Highmark. They've got the Chiefs in November, the Bengals, high-octane offense in December. And toward the end of the season, they will play the Eagles there. And as we know, Dan, the Bills have that strong home field advantage in the months of December and January. So that's good news for them.
Absolutely. Their toughest games are at home, and that's great. And the Bills were perfect at home last season. And that's why when I look at this game, I think the Ravens are more talented. I think they're a little bit healthier now. I know they have a couple of injuries banged up, but there are still some question marks heading into this game for the Bills. My heart says it's the Bills at home because they've just been so good in these spots in the regular season. My head just doesn't know if they have the horses or the dogs for this fight. And I go, they don't want to overreact. And it's a lot of young players, first times, first NFL starts, all of these things. And we were kind of joking around on the Buffalo Plus podcast the other day going, hey, don't overreact. Like whoever comes out and whatever happens week one, don't overreact because they will be a different team, whether it's health or experience by the time they get to the playoffs. Remember, last season, week 4, the Ravens blew the doors off of an injured Bills team, and they came back and beat them in the divisional round in the playoffs. But this is week 1 of the NFL season, Craig. This is the prime time to overreact. There will never be more overreacting than after week 1 of the regular season. So to try and keep things into perspective, but when you have Josh and Lamar on Sunday night primetime TV, it's going to be hard not to overreact one way or the other.
All right, Dan, before you go, I know that you'll keep it impartial with me, even though you cover the Bills. The Bills season this year ends with what? What do they have in their back pocket at the end of the season? How far do they go?
I think they have a Super Bowl appearance. And like you said, who knows what can happen in the Super Bowl at that point. I do think that this team has been scarred. They've gone through the moments. I think they've built something special, and they've done it the right way. It's going to be how well do those young players develop throughout the season for those big moments.
All right, Dan, AFC Championship then for the Buffalo Bills. We'll see how it works out. Thanks again for coming on the show. Enjoy the game Sunday night.
Thanks, Greg.
We'll be right back. Don't go away.
I was looking at through my phone at first. I'm like, why is there such a delay? And why are we getting pitch hitters right away? Oh, the pitcher got thrown out for some reason. Maybe he hurt himself. But no, turning out and seeing a brawl was absolutely hilarious to let that one play out. Just the way it is sometimes in baseball. We don't get a lot of good fights and a lot of good brawls and anger, specifically from two teams that aren't going to the playoffs. So good on them for showing that moxie last time. But it's good to see a little bit of a brawl and a little bit of that passion here.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You're looking for JJ. You and I already discussed here. Addison's gone for a couple of games here. They thoroughly have a number 3, Thielen fine. You do have a nice tight end here. The running game could be solid here. Like I said, I don't think he'll have the least productive season of his career. If the question was how it should have been with the injuries, I might have said yes, because then it would be 88, 1,407. So then I might have said yes.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
No better place to be than SportsGrid. College football today, right here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe, Lisi, Donnie, right side for the entire season, Joe, on Saturday. This is your place. This is your place to be, Joe.
I love it. I tell you, and it's flying. Show's flying. We're on an hour already. I can't wait. We're licking our chops for these Rat Pack games. And it's a great slate.
Look at you on the screen right
Look
now.
like a little rat.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
The reason why I feel like Jared Goff doesn't really enter these MVP conversations. Jared Goff last year was on the team with the best record in football, threw for 4,700 yards, 37 touchdowns, and Tom was never in the race. He was never in the race because we know he's not that guy.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Simon Applebaum is with us from the podcast. Tomorrow will be televised as we enter week 2 of college football, week 1 of the NFL. Let's bring Simon in. Simon, it's great to catch up with you once again. And good news. Everybody got to watch all the games last week. The carriage dispute, I guess is what they call it, ended up being resolved. So everybody gets to watch football on Fox no matter how or what you subscribe to.
They certainly do, Craig, and great to be back with you on a Friday afternoon. By the way, we're on today at 3 p.m. Eastern Pacific with the market televised on Talk Face and YouTube. Anyway, when we were last here, it looked like who knew whether YouTube TV and Fox were going to make a deal. Then, a day later, guess what? They made a short-term extension so that you could watch the college football on Fox, including Ohio State and Texas, which, by the way, had 16.6 million people watching, which is probably the biggest college football game that Fox has ever had in its history. So good on that. And then, a day later, they made the long-term deal. So YouTube now has a full carriage deal with Fox. Fox can do its thing. YouTube has its thing. And by the way,
All right, we'll get back to Simon in just a minute. We're having some audio difficulties with Simon here, so let's go back and recap some of the Major League Baseball highlights from yesterday. We'll start off and, of course, get to the New York Yankees, who took out the Houston Astros. A bit of controversy at the end of the game, which we'll get to a little bit later in the show. But the Yankees end up getting the win, and they also got a home run from Trent Grisham, who hit his 30th of the season. It's been a banner season for the Yankees leadoff hitter, who hits his 30th, and now, of course, is headed toward a potential postseason showdown. Still a month to go before they get there, but it's a good sign for Grisham and the Yanks.
Oh, it feels good. A series against a playoff team, playing meaningful games like that down the stretch, I think it's good for us going forward.
A lot of ups and downs, interesting calls, inconsistent strike zone. Just how do you wrap your head around the last two games in particular?
They were good wins. Hard fought. Bad calls, good calls. They're part of the game. It's our job to get over them and keep going. And I think we did a good job of that tonight.
Pittsburgh Pirates haven't won many big series this season, but they did complete a 3-game sweep of the Dodgers. 5-3, the final there yesterday. Paul Skeens, 6 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1.83 earned run, 9.8 earned run average on the season. As Skeens is now chasing that Cy Young Award, it was he and, of course, Zach Wheeler neck and neck. With Wheeler out for the year, it appears to be all Skeens. Dave Roberts, after the game, talked about his team dropping 3 in a row to the unlikely foe, Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, it's I want to say it's uncharacteristic, but I think we've done that a lot as far as losing to teams that, don't have winning records. I don't have a reason for it outside of the fact that, teams are going to bring their best against us, but that's teams with, above 500 records too. Tonight in a vacuum, you're facing one of the best pitchers, but yeah, it doesn't change the fact that other teams, we just haven't found ways to beat those guys with losing records. I don't have an answer.
Phillies and Brewers, of course, could be a postseason matchup. Ranger Suarez, 6 shutout innings yesterday. The Phillies beat the Brewers 2-0. Also, the story on the other side has been Freddie Peralta, 29 straight innings without giving up a run. Here is Trey Turner on the Phillies shutout victory.
Yeah, I think that's kind of our attitude, is just keep pushing, keep competing. Good things will happen. I felt like the bats were pretty good. Even though we were striking out, we were making them work, and our pitching staff did a great job today. Ranger was really good, and then bullpen was great. And give them that lead and hold on to it was big, because you got to win games like that. You can't always just win 8-0 or kind of slug it out. Sometimes you got to play small ball and come up big.
All right, let's bring Simon back. We got our technical difficulties straightened out. Simon, great to have you back here on NewsWire. Let's dive right back in and start over here a little bit. Good news for everybody watching, of course, college and pro football. For those who are not familiar, Fox was not available on YouTube last week. Now it is, so that's good news moving forward.
Absolutely, Craig, and good for YouTube television, because last night they sponsored the NFL kickoff game on NBC, Peacock, and Telemundo. And it was a little embarrassing if they did not have people thinking, oh, YouTube's got this game, and we can't see the games Sunday on Fox. The good news is that YouTube tonight has a very big deal. They have exclusively the game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers live from São Paulo, Brazil. And that's big because this is the first time that YouTube, not a cable network, not a broadcast network, not a mega content service, has an NFL regular season game exclusively. And don't forget, YouTube now draws 15% of all TV viewing in a month, according to the latest Nielsen numbers for July. So this is a big deal for YouTube. You get a sense that the NFL is going to be watching the results of viewership very, very carefully.
College football gets off to a roaring start on Saturday, Simon. There were some big games. Were a lot of people watching?
Yes, here's how roaring it was. Fox's game, Ohio State and Texas, 16.6 million people watching. 4 games over Labor Day weekend had more than 10 million viewers. The Alabama-Florida State game, the LSU-Clemson game, the Notre Dame-Miami game all had between 10 and 11 million viewers on ABC. The TCU-North Carolina game, Bill Belichick's closing debut in college, it was on ESPN Monday night, had 6.1 million people. The only one of the few games that didn't do too well, the Big Ten Saturday night game, because it was up against ABC's college football. That game, which was New Mexico versus Michigan, only 2 million viewers.
The NFL Today is back on. The NFL Today Plus is a new way of people consuming and streaming NFL programming. Any big changes going into the season, Simon?
Yes, in terms of the announcing teams, the big change is at CBS. J.J. Watt, who was one of the people on the NFL Today, he now goes into the booth with Ian Eagle. They're going to be the number 2 team. Charles Davis, who was Eagle's partner, he goes to Andrew Catalan's team, the number 4 team. And by the way, Eagle and J.J. Watt, how's this for a debut? The Jets-Steeler game, which will be carried here locally on WCBS in New York. On the Fox side, all the pro football commentators and announcing teams say as they are. Allison Williams now, who is a sideline reporter on Fox and ESPN College Football, she now becomes a sideline reporter for the NFL coverage on the number 3 team, which is Kevin Kugler and Darwin Johnson.
And Simon, a farewell to Lee Corso goes out in style. Picked every game right last week, didn't he?
Yes, he did. And his exit from College Game Day last Saturday was marvelous. 5.1 million people saw it. He was part of College Game Day from the start, and I thought what ESPN did in tribute to him, and Chad Hanna, the producer who passed away from Game Day earlier this year, also beautiful.
Thanks for coming on, Simon. Appreciate it. We'll be right back to wrap it up now.
I was looking at it through my phone at first. I'm like, why is there such a delay? And why are we getting pitch hitters right away? Oh, the pitcher got thrown out for some reason. Maybe he hurt himself. But no, turning out and seeing a brawl was absolutely hilarious to let that one play out. Just the way it is sometimes in baseball. We don't get a lot of good fights and a lot of good brawls in anger, specifically from 2 teams that aren't going to the playoffs. So good on them for showing that moxie last time. But it's good to see a little bit of a brawl and a little bit of that passion here.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You're looking for JJ. You and I already discussed here. Addison's gone for a couple of games here. They don't really have a number 3, Thielen fine. You do have a nice tight end here. The running game could be solid here. Like I said, I don't think he'll have the least productive season of his career. If the question was how it should have been with the injuries, I might have said yes, because then it would be 88, 1,407. So then I might have said yes.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
No better place to be than SportsGrid. College football today, right here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe, Lisi, Donnie, right side for the entire season, Joe, on Saturday. This is your place. This is your place to be, Joe.
I love it. I tell you. And it's flying. Show's flying. We're on an hour already. I can't wait. We're licking our chops for these Rat Pack games. And it's a great slate.
Look at you on the screen right now.
Look like a little rat.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
The reason why I feel like Jared Goff doesn't really enter these MVP conversations. Jared Goff last year was on the team with the best record in football, threw for 4,700 yards, 37 touchdowns, and Tom was never in the race. He was never in the race because we know he's not that guy.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Don't forget, later today, I'll be back on Fantasy Sports Today. So make sure you catch me ahead of Week 1 in fantasy football. For now, we wrap up the show with my thoughts on this whole Bill Belichick story about not letting in New England Patriots staff to check out his team. Also, there's another heavyweight fight coming that you'll have no interest in, but the names are big, so we'll talk about it. And a little controversy last night with Houston and New York. No surprise there. Time now for some last licks. So Taylor Trammell plays on the Houston Astros, an anonymous player you may not have heard about. Once upon a time, a pretty highly touted prospect, but now, of course, making his way with the Houston Astros. Apparently, the Yankees noticed something odd about his bat going into the series and apparently said nothing because Trammell did virtually nothing throughout the series. But when he had a big hit late in the game yesterday, Aaron Boone, the manager of the Yankees, decided to have the umpires take a look and inevitably confiscate his bat for what the umpire said maybe was potentially bat shaving, which is basically taking some of the meat off the end of the bat to create a stronger barrel. The bat was apparently discolored. Trammell said that he's never heard of bat shaving. He has no idea what they're even talking about, which is what you would say anyway, even if you did. But this could be just much ado about nothing. I will give credit to Boone for waiting until he actually did something at the plate to pull this off. But things just basically settled. The Astros, by the way, controversy a couple of different times this week. Remember, Framber Valdez threw to his catcher early in the week when the catcher and him were not on the same page and almost crushed the catcher in the you-know-whats. All right, Astros, get it together here ahead of next week. All right, Bill Belichick, he's the head coach of North Carolina, having a really tough time in the first week of the season. They got absolutely crushed by TCU at home. It was one of the ugliest outcomes in college football this past week, and now an ugly story to go along with it. Apparently, as we told you earlier in the show, ESPN reported that Belichick will allow all teams in the NFL to come out, check out his players, scout them ahead of the upcoming NFL draft in April of next year. But there's one team that's not allowed. What are you doing, Bill? Salty Bill, who was not happy after being let go by the Patriots, will not allow his former team, the New England Patriots, to come scout. He has banned them, according to this report, in Chapel Hill. So every team in the NFL can come check out his players at UNC, except for the Patriots. They're going to have to do something different. I mean, come on. I mean, get over it a little bit here. I mean, are you that salty over Robert Kraft and the way things ended? I mean, let's just be honest. The Patriots were really not that good over the last couple of years. Belichick did not do a good job managing as a general manager of the team, too. It's every once in a while, you got to have a little self-awareness and look in the mirror. Sometimes I know you lose. We've seen it all over the world. You lose a job, people get salty. I get it. But in this case, he had such an incredible run for the Patriots. Decades, Super Bowls. Move on. You're only hurting your own players if you're eliminating one team in the NFL from coming and scouting them. Get over it, man. It's done. All right. How about Jake Paul? He's not in a boxing match that we're talking about on the show. It's like a shock. So Mike Tyson's getting back in the ring again? Are you kidding me? After that last fight, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, looked like he was not just done, but the fight didn't even look legit. No offense. Now he's going to have an exhibition, get this, against Floyd Mayweather Jr. You can't make this up. Mayweather doesn't fight either anymore. He just makes a lot of sports bets and loses. This is pretty much what we've seen from him. But apparently they're going to fight, and it's going to be streaming somewhere, and we're all going to get sucked in, and we're going to watch this thing again. The state of boxing is unfortunately so poor. I believe there is actually a Canelo fight that's coming up that's actually pretty good. But as far as the heavyweight division is concerned, there is nothing, absolutely nothing to watch. And I guess Mayweather is going to step up in class a little bit just to fight this exhibition against Tyson. And listen, Netflix already showed that a lot of people are going to watch this thing. So I won't be one of them. That'll do it for our show today. Can't wait for the football weekend. Thanks again to all of our great guests here on the show. Dan Fate, Simon Applebaum, of course, Sam McQuillan here on the show, Bill Bender on the program as well. Great stuff from everybody participating on our show today. Also, thanks to our director, Luke, and for my producer, Frank, I'm Craig Mish. Don't forget, download the SportsGrid app. If you're betting this weekend, you can track all your bets on the app. Take out your phone, scan this QR code. Available for iOS and Android. You can stream our shows for absolutely nothing. It is free. SportsGrid app available for both iOS and Android. Next time you'll see me is on Fantasy Sports Today. And if fantasy's not your thing, that's okay. I'll see you Monday for our next edition of NewsWire. Have a great weekend. Enjoy all the college and pro football, everybody.